improve economic growth opportunities by linking those to private investment that can be leveraged through the county's judicious use of its funds. And we've got to be thinking about our human capital. Do we have residents with the skills to seize the jobs of the future and act as magnets for those jobs? And that's why the initiative that you mentioned with respect to the governor linking tax-free zones to our colleges can actually be quite helpful in creating a pipeline from the educational system to the world of work, and that can be good for Westchester.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bramson. Now a follow-up, 60 seconds to Mr. Astorino only.
Well, I think we just look at the two.
Hold on,
sure.
Mr. Langariello, let him answer.
I wanted to clarify your position if you support the tax-free zones, but also if you thought that they meant competition for property owners in the area.
They certainly can, and you shouldn't be pitting one against another, and that's what this could do. Let's look at the economy, though, and let's look at the differences between our economic plan, which has proven to show that we can grow the economy here, put people back to work. 27,000 new jobs added when 15,000 were lost. There's a reason for that. It's because the tax structure here is better than it was. That's why people say we're on the right track in this county. That's why businesses are taking advantage of this. You contrast that to what's happened in New Rochelle over Mr. Bramson's 16 budgets as a mayor and a councilman. He's raised taxes 109%. Do the math. That's a 7% average per year, including this year. That's unacceptable to businesses. That's unacceptable to homeowners. Seniors who are trying to stay in their homes are having to pick between going back to work, and believe me, I've seen it. I've been to areas all over New Rochelle, Home Depot, other stores, where seniors are back to work because they can't afford to pay the taxes in New Rochelle. Young couples, where are they going to move? The jobs aren't in New Rochelle right now. Right now, the economic plan on Main Street is dollar stores, vacant stores, and empty stores.
All right, Mr. Astorino, thanks very much. Mr. Bramson, you'll have your chance. Hang on a second. But first, all very good questions, but we want to hear from some local voters today as well. I have no doubt that taxes will come up again. This week, News 12 reporters asked some regular folks to pose a question for the candidates. Let's take a listen.
My name is Karen Jansen. I live in Eastchester, New York, and my question for the candidate is, what are you going to do about my property taxes? My school taxes, my property taxes are killing me.
Well, what do you know? She was thinking just like us. Well, Noam Bramson, you now have 1 minute to respond to the topic of taxes.
Well, of course, it's a critical priority for every one of us. We don't want seniors to feel forced out of a region where they have family and friends. We want to make sure that younger professionals can move into our region. And for everybody in between, the tax bill is often the biggest bill that you face. And so we've got to move beyond slogans and have an honest plan that can actually address this challenge. Now, you heard what Mr. Astorino just said a moment ago about New Rochelle. What he's not telling you is the following, that New Rochelle actually has the lowest municipal tax rate of all the big cities of Westchester County. And in the time that I've been in office, in those 18 years, the rate of change in New Rochelle has also been the lowest of all the big cities of Westchester County. In fact, if you compare my city of New Rochelle to Mr. Astorino's town of Mount Pleasant, the property tax levy per capita, per person in Mount Pleasant is nearly 50% higher than it is in New Rochelle. And here's where it gets really interesting. Mr. Astorino and I both served in local government. I'm still there. He was there for about 11 years. And while he was there, the rate of increase in Mount Pleasant was higher than it was during my service in New Rochelle.
Right. Please respect the bell. Thank you very much. Now, you have 1 minute, Mr. Astorino, on taxes.
Okay, so let's talk about this, because this is really important, and this gets to the heart and the difference between us. I have reduced the property tax levy by 2% in my 3 budgets. I've already said the 4th budget that comes down in a couple weeks will have a 0. I've respected taxpayers. I know how hard it is to make ends meet. In New Rochelle, let's just take over the last 4 years since I've been county executive and you've been mayor. Over those 4 years, county tax levy has dropped. In New Rochelle, the tax bill has gone up 16.7% over 4 years. The school taxes have gone up over 11.5% in those 4 years, and you're partly responsible for that because of the bad deals you made with developers that sent over 150 kids unfunded to the school district at a cost of $2.5 million. That had to be made up by everybody else. But what happened to your county tax bill if you live in New Rochelle? It went down 4.9%. And I guarantee you, if I were in charge of the budget in New Rochelle, and I'm not, I wish I were, the taxes would go down and spending would go down. Because 7% a year is unforgettable.
I'm sorry. I know you want to respond. You're going to have a chance in just a second. You're just getting started here, but we do have bills to pay. We got taxes too. We're going to take a quick break. Back in 2 minutes with more Vote 2013 election special right here on News 12. And welcome back. You are watching a News 12 Vote 2013 live debate in the race for Westchester County Executive. I'm Scott McGee. Let's get right to another round of questions, starting with Janine Rose. Your question this time for Noam Bramson.
Yeah, Mr. Bramson, I want to take us back one more time to the idea of mass transit on the Tappan Zee Bridge. While it's fine for all politicians to be patting each other on the back for getting the project going, and it's well-deserved praise, the real truth is there's no rail line on this bridge. They put bus rapid transit in, but the truth is that not many people take those express buses. In fact, the Beeline company was looking at eliminating express buses at one point. Are you content that the new bridge is really just going to be a slightly larger replacement for the old bridge and not accomplish what everyone talked about accomplishing, which was actually creating that master plan and connecting Westchester and Rockland with a rail line?
Well, if that's where we stop, then in fact I would not be satisfied at all. And that's why I think the response that Mr. Astorino gave a little while ago about perhaps having an express bus to White Plains is entirely inadequate. And I think it's important to define our terms. Bus rapid transit is essentially a train on wheels. It doesn't run on a track, but from a service perspective, from a user perspective, it feels a lot like a train. You get on at a station, you have the sort of regular scheduling that you associate with the train. And that's why it's thought of as a better form of transit than just an express bus. But doing it properly really does require you to plan out not just what's going to exist on the bridge itself, but where are the stops going to be, what kind of growth are you going to allow around those stops, how are you going to finance the infrastructure that can support it. And all of that involves a conversation that should be unfolding right now. And frankly, Rockland County is way ahead of us on this because they've taken their planning responsibilities seriously. And this is going to matter for the next generation because Westchester is going to grow one way or the other. And one possibility is we gobble up open space and degrade our environment and overburden our services and clog our roads with traffic. And the other possibility is we attract investment to the right places, where we're less dependent on the automobile, where we have livable, walkable cities that people can enjoy, and where there's a closer distance between home and work so we have lower commute times. That's the essence of good planning that creates both a strong economy and a healthier environment. That's something that I care about deeply because as a mayor, I've worked on it and I know how to apply it on a regional basis.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Astorino. 90 seconds on specifically the rail line issue on the new tap.
No, I don't think we need it right now, and it would be billions more and taxes would go up, and so too would the tolls, and that's a concern for me and should be for everybody. You can plan all you want, but I don't know if you listened before or have been watching News 12 for the last year, I'm on the Mass Transit Task Force. And we are ready to release within the next 60 days the plan for the short-term, medium-term, and long-term mass transit options for this region in connection with the new Tappan Zee Bridge. This would allow a bus rapid transit system, dedicated lanes on the bridge. It would go across either a hybrid of 287 or 119. It would help Tarrytown and Elmsford and White Plains. People could have an option to go on the train into New York City or a shuttle system to go to the office parks. Also going north-south, because that's certainly part of this, down the Thruway or down Central Avenue. So all this is being planned. It is important, but we also have to watch out for the money. We can't just spend endlessly because eventually we have to pay for it. I know that's a concept that's a little different between you and I. I very much care about what things cost. In New Rochelle, you have pummeled taxpayers over the last 18 years. There's a difference in opinion on what that should be. 7% a year is just, to me, outrageous. That's why people can't live in New Rochelle. That's why people can't live in Westchester if we continuously have these kind of tax increases. To your credit, in the last couple of debates, you said you would raise taxes. I don't think we need to do that. And we have shown over the last 4 years we're not going to raise taxes. And I will continue to fight for the taxpayer and preserve essential services as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Astorino. A 60-second follow-up from Ms. Rose.
Mr. Bramson, you mentioned the growing population. This bridge will not be completed for another 5 years, perhaps 6 or 7. Do you think when that bridge is done with only the rail for the buses and not trains, will it serve that growing population in 7 years, you think, when they cut the ribbon?
Well, once again, if we stop at the express bus only and don't introduce bus rapid transit, then I think we're going to have real problems in the region. And more importantly, we will miss an opportunity to really energize our economy and really plan for the future of our environment. So I think that's vitally important for us to pursue in a serious way. I just want to come back to a couple of the things Rob said. You realize in this debate he keeps coming back to New Rochelle and tries to sort of hit me on the record of New Rochelle. So I want to make something clear. I've been elected 5 times by the people of New Rochelle, most recently with 79% of the vote, which is the biggest margin for any mayoral candidate in the history of our city. And that's because the people of New Rochelle know my record and believe in my record. And that says a lot more than the negative and dishonest claims that Mr. Astorino has consistently made in this campaign, including today. In fact, the Westchester Fair Campaign Practices Committee, independent, nonpartisan organization, found 5 of his separate claims to be misleading and false. And as you heard today, he's repeating it because New Rochelle has the lowest municipal taxes of all of Westchester's big cities.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bramson. Our next question from Jerry McKinstry from WVOX Radio. This is for Rob Astorino, 90 seconds.
Okay, we'll talk about the flip side of taxes, and that's expenses.
Yep.
Mr. Astorino, when you consider that pensions, Medicare, special education, all of these are projected to continue to go up, I mean, how do you expect to handle these growing costs in a second term?
Well, first off, let me just talk about the nonpartisan committee. 11 Democrats, 1 Republican. That's the nonpartisan committee that ruled. These were semantics. The facts are the facts. I know the truth hurts, but you did raise taxes 109% over those 16 budgets, which is 7% a year. You did take lifetime, you gave yourself a raise of 40% as a part-time mayor. And think about what it was like, by the way. In 2008, when you took that raise, you're a part-time mayor, and you take a raise to $89,000 when people were losing their jobs. It is just the wrong thing to do. Now, with regard to the pensions that you had said, look, only 4 counties in New York over the last 4 years have a smaller budget today than they did 4 years ago. Westchester, Wayne, Orange County, and Schenectady County. We have the biggest reduction, $172 million, according to the Comptroller's report, less today. Now, if we didn't cut that money out, taxes would have gone up over 15% for that. So we're watching everything. The taxes in New Rochelle are exploding because it's the easy way out. Just raise taxes and blame pensions and blame everything else. Well, we didn't. We made sure that we took control of our expenses. But I'm the leading advocate. I went to Albany with Mayor Bloomberg to support Governor Cuomo's Tier 6 proposal. That's not enough, by the way. We're getting crushed by pensions. Westchester County's tax bill is in check only because we've attacked all the other stuff. Pensions alone went from $3.3 million to $96 million next year.
All right, thank you very much. 90 seconds now to Noam Bramson. Same question on trying to reduce expenses.
Well, I want to get back to something Rob said a moment ago. You heard him talk about the pay raise in New Rochelle. So first let me mention a fact and then I think some interesting detail. So first of all, the position of mayor in New Rochelle has had exactly 1 raise in the last 18 years. And here's where it gets interesting. If you look at Mr. Astorino's record when he was in local government on the Mount Pleasant Town Board, over his 11 years, he passed 8 pay raises. And each of those pay raises, when you add them up, exceeded the rate of inflation. He gave himself a 49% pay raise during his 11 years, much more than anything we've done in New Rochelle. So this really isn't about raising salaries or raising pay. This is about hypocrisy. Because talk about the pot calling the kettle black. And the reason why we're having this kind of discussion, which really doesn't impact the future of Westchester County at all. These are the kinds of issues that serve as distractions. The reason we're having this kind of discussion is because Mr. Astorino knows that his real record is one that the people of Westchester County will reject. If you ask people, have your property taxes gone up or down in the last 4 years? if we're honest, we're all going to say our taxes have gone up. Mr. Astorino's own personal taxes are up 25% in the last 4 years. So that's not working. And we know that Mr. Astorino's views on any number of other issues are out of touch with Westchester's mainstream values. He thinks politicians should decide for women whether to carry a pregnancy to term. He brought gun shows to our county center. He's against marriage equality.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. McKinstry, you have a 1-minute follow-up. You may or may not get an answer to it.
Let me ask in a different way. Mr. Astorino, going forward, we know the history, but going forward, dealing with these massive expenses, I mean, do you plan to have the same approach of cuts, or are tax increases off the table completely?
We don't need tax increases, just like they do in New Rochelle. That's the answer for everything in New Rochelle. And by the way, it's not just tax increases, because he ran out of tax increases. Here's how he did it, and this is complete opposite of what I would do and what I have done. We made sure we don't take from the reserve fund anymore. That was a past practice of the Spano administration. We don't borrow for operating costs. We don't borrow for tax refunds. We don't do anymore. We broke the bad habits of the past. What's happening in New Rochelle, aside from 109% tax increases over his 16 budgets and the 40% pay hike for a part-time job to $89,000 he gave himself, when the world was collapsing, that is the wrong example to set. What did I do? We've cut our staff 19% on the county executive's office. We also made sure that our unions are paying for the first time. 7 of our 8 unions, we've negotiated contracts. They're paying for the first time for health care. They've never done that in the past, and I don't think that's fair. They're paying just like everyone else is. That's a big savings. That's a paradigm shift. New employees are going to be paying in retirement as well. So there's a big difference in what we do and how we do it.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Astorino. A little bit on expenses there for you. Mr. Mark Lingariello from the Westchester County Business Journal and HV Biz, your question now, 90 seconds to Noam Bramson.
Mr. Bramson, the state controller and others have criticized industrial development agencies, or IDAs, for giving away too much in terms of tax exemptions and not getting enough back in terms of jobs. Do you think IDAs need more regulation? And are the local IDAs getting enough in terms of cost benefit?
Well, that's a great question, Mark, and I think the devil's in the detail on this. IDAs can be enormously powerful tools to help stimulate the right form of investment that can contribute to our tax base and help with the job growth as well as urban renewal. So we want to make sure that our IDAs can be effective. At the same time, you want to make sure that the oversight is exactly what it should be to protect the public interest and ensure that the benefits that are promised by developers are actually delivered to the community. So it's a matter of striking the right balance. And I'll tell you that our experience in New Rochelle has been a very positive one. 20 years ago, New Rochelle was a disaster. We had rubble-strewn vacant lots surrounding our train station, a huge 50% vacancy rate on Main Street, an abandoned mall occupying a superblock on the eastern portion of our downtown. Since then, we've seen hundreds of millions of dollars of new investment, and that investment is netting taxpayers a positive $8.5 million every single year. That's in contrast to the mischaracterizations that you've heard from Mr. Astorino throughout this discussion. So I know what it takes to develop an economy in a way that will be successful, that will bring life and energy to our downtowns, that will help benefit taxpayers. And on a regional basis, getting this right involves infrastructure, it involves land use regulations, it involves making sure that we have people with the skills to seize the jobs of the future. And we don't have that kind of strategy in place right now. And that means that our prospects for economic development in the future are seriously diminished by the neglect of this administration.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bramson. Mr. Astorino, balancing tax breaks with the benefits that come with new businesses.
Yep. Well, there's 2 different approaches here, and you can look this up, the Comptroller's report. Westchester County's Industrial Development Agency, which has helped create all of these jobs I was talking about, certainly not all of them, I don't take credit for that, but we have had a direct impact on why Pepsi stayed, a direct impact on why Regeneron is doing what it's doing, a direct impact on WestMed and so many other companies that have decided to invest in Westchester County. Our average cost per job gained is about $1,500. That's one of the best in the state. New Rochelle, according to the state controller, is $27,000 a job. That is the second worst in New York State. So the math is very simple. You can give away the store to developers, and they could put projects in that actually cost people money. Again, the Avalon development has over 150 unfunded children because Mr. Bramson gave away the store. He gave away tax abatements for decades and freebies to the developer at the cost of the school district. $2.5 million. So yes, the school taxes did go up in New Rochelle, and he's partly to blame for that. So if we want to have good development, we should know the economics behind it. It shouldn't cost more than it does to bring it in. It should be revenue-based. It's the same with Echo Bay. Echo Bay started off as something that was going to be really good. We were going to have a lot of mixed-use development there. We were going to have different types of housing. We were going to have hotel rooms, 300, a lot of retail, 150,000 square feet. That is now a shell of what it was. It's now down to 25,000 square feet for retail, which is nothing. There's no more hotel rooms generating taxes. So it is a giveaway to the developer at the cost of taxpayers.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Astorino. Mr. Lungariello, a 60-second follow-up from Mr.